Since the dawn of time, humanity has been absolutely terrified of one single inevitable truth. We all get old, our bodies break down, and eventually we all die. To fight this, we have spent billions of dollars on expensive creams, strict diets, and questionable pills just to buy a few extra years of youth and hopelessly delay the inevitable. But what if a mysterious new virus suddenly swept across the globe tomorrow? Not a virus that makes you cough, or gives you a fever, or kills you. Nothing like that at all. But a highly engineered, globally contagious retrovirus that infects every single cell in your body and completely, permanently stops the biological aging process. You would never get sick. You would never grow old, and your body would return to its absolute prime. Theoretically, assuming you don't step in front of a bus, you would live forever. It sounds like the ultimate miracle, the absolute holy grail of human existence. We would throw the greatest global party in history to celebrate finally conquering mortality. But in reality, this miracle cure would be a terrifying, inescapable curse. It would trigger a rapid chain reaction of biological horrors and complete societal collapse. It would be the start of the absolute worst apocalypse in Earth's history. Welcome to the ultimate biological trap, the terrifying reality of the immortality virus. To understand why curing death is actually a terrible idea, we first need to understand why we die in the first place. Your body is a breathtaking masterpiece of biological engineering, made up of roughly 37 trillion microscopic living cells. And hidden deep inside the nucleus of almost every single one of those cells is the core of your existence, your DNA. This incredibly complex, twisting molecule is the ultimate instruction manual for building and maintaining you. Throughout your entire life, your cells are constantly dividing to heal wounds, grow, and replace dead tissue. But every time a cell divides to make a new copy of itself, it has to perfectly copy your DNA too. And here is the fatal flaw in our biology. Nature's copy machine is not perfect. It cannot physically copy the very ends of the DNA strands. So, to protect your vital genetic code, the ends of your chromosomes are capped with protective, disposable genetic sequences called telomeres. Think of telomeres exactly like the little plastic tips at the ends of your shoelaces. They keep the important genetic information tightly bound, preventing the DNA strands from fraying and falling apart. But there is a catch. With every single cell division, a tiny piece of that protective telomere is snipped off. Over decades, as your cells divide thousands of times, these caps get shorter and shorter until they run out entirely. This hard boundary is called the Hayflick limit. Once the telomeres are gone, the cell stops dividing. It degrades, and you age. As millions, then billions of your cells hit this limit and stop dividing, the macroscopic effect is what we call aging. Your skin wrinkles, your bones weaken, and your organs slowly fail. Aging is the root cause of almost every major disease. It is a relentless, one-way biological clock that inevitably leads to the grave. But nature actually has a built-in cheat code to reverse this process, an enzyme called telomerase. Think of telomerase as a tiny cellular construction worker whose only job is to rebuild those protective plastic tips. However, in almost all adult human cells, the gene that produces this enzyme is permanently switched off and locked away. To prevent out-of-control growth and mutations, your body intentionally denies you access to the fountain of youth until the virus arrives. An incredibly advanced, lab-engineered retrovirus released directly into the upper atmosphere. It is highly aerosolized and spreads infinitely faster than the common cold. But it produces absolutely zero symptoms. Within a matter of weeks, it crosses every ocean and border, reaching a 100% global infection rate. The virus quietly slips into your cells and performs one highly specific piece of genetic editing. It finds the locked telomerase gene, smashes the padlock, and turns the cellular factory back on. Instantly, your cells are flooded with the enzyme. The frayed, shrinking telomeres are rapidly rebuilt to their full, youthful length. The Hayflick limit is officially abolished. Your cells can now divide perfectly, cleanly, and infinitely. The biological clock isn't just stopped, it is running backward. The era of human mortality has ended. For the first few years, it would truly feel like heaven on earth. Retirement homes would instantly be converted into pumping nightclubs. People who were bedridden for decades would suddenly be running ultramarathons, climbing mountains, and living out their wildest physical dreams. The primal fear of getting old and frail would be completely erased from the human psyche. We would feel absolutely invincible. But remember, nature is incredibly cruel, and biology is always a strict zero-sum game. There is a very specific, terrifying reason why our cells originally evolved to die in the first place. Every single day, your DNA is relentlessly bombarded by radiation, sunlight, and toxic chemicals, causing millions of tiny genetic errors. Normally, when a cell detects that its DNA is too badly damaged to function, it triggers a strict safety protocol called apoptosis. Apoptosis is essentially programmed cellular suicide. The damaged cell safely sacrifices itself to protect the rest of the body. But thanks to our new miracle immortality virus, that vital self-destruct button has been permanently jammed and disabled. The damaged cells completely forget how to die. Instead of quietly bowing out, they just keep violently dividing. They divide and mutate over and over, forever. And we already have a very familiar name for immortal mutating cells: cancer.
It's cancer!
Without the ability to cull damaged cells, minor genetic mutations rapidly spiral out of absolute control. Within a few short decades, almost every single human being on Earth would develop rampant, aggressive, hyper-cancer. And because our rejuvenated immune systems are also hyperactive, the cancer wouldn't actually be able to kill us easily. Instead, humanity would slowly devolve into walking, bloated masses of perpetual tumors, trapped in eternal agony. And before we discuss the total collapse of human society and mass starvation, let's take a quick pause to talk about a much healthier way to learn about biology with today's sponsor. Brilliant is an interactive learning platform that makes understanding complex science, math, and logic incredibly fun and easy. Instead of maliciously mutating your DNA, mutate your brain. Use the link in the description to get 20% off your premium subscription. Thanks to Brilliant for supporting us. Now, back to our horrific, never-ending biological apocalypse. Let's pretend that we magically solve the cancer problem. We invent a nanobot that instantly cures the eternal tumors. Suddenly, we are back to our utopian dream. Except, this is where the real nightmare begins. Because under this new biological regime, absolutely nobody is dying. The graveyards are permanently closed. But unfortunately for our finite planet, new people are still constantly being born every single second. Earth's population would skyrocket from 8 billion to 20, 50, then 100 billion in the blink of a cosmic eye. Our planet has a strict mathematical limit on space and resources. We cannot simply expand forever on a sphere. To make room for the endless flood of new, immortal citizens, we would have to bulldoze every single forest. We would drain every beautiful river and lake dry just to provide enough fresh drinking water for the masses. And we would relentlessly concrete over every last inch of green, arable land to build towering, claustrophobic apartment blocks. Just to successfully house the immortal masses, Earth would be transformed into a suffocating, gray, planet-wide prison. But the absolute lack of physical space is only the beginning of our self-inflicted hell. Because there is a fundamental law of physics that a virus cannot rewrite, the laws of thermodynamics. Being immortal simply means your cells won't degrade from age. It does not mean they run on magic. Your body is still an organic machine. It requires a massive, constant intake of calories and nutrients just to keep your heart beating and lungs breathing. And feeding 100 billion immortal people on a completely paved-over planet is an agricultural impossibility. The global food supply chains would completely collapse. The grocery store shelves would be stripped bare in a matter of days. This leads to a horrific realization. You cannot die of old age. but you can still starve. Normally, starvation ends in a peaceful death, but the virus forces your cells to stay alive, trapped at 0% battery, forever. Billions of humans would exist in a perpetual, agonizing state of extreme starvation, physically unable to perish. And when you have billions of starving, desperate, immortal people trapped in a concrete cage, society breaks. Neighbors would turn on neighbors. People would fight brutal, endless wars over a single crust of bread or a drop of clean water. The utopian megacities would erupt into endless, hyper-violent riots, burning with the rage of the starving immortals. Meanwhile, the ultra-wealthy elites would lock themselves inside heavily fortified floating fortresses high above the smog, hoarding the last remaining vertical farms and synthetic food synthesizers, living as gods while the surface burns. We wanted to build a paradise. Instead, we successfully engineered the most perfect, inescapable version of hell. To restore order and prevent humanity from completely eating itself alive, the global government would be forced to pass one final draconian law. To stop the exponential math of immortal starvation, the unified global government passes the ultimate, heartbreaking law. Reproduction is strictly and permanently banned. Having a child goes from being a fundamental human right to the most severe crime imaginable. Anyone caught adding a new mouth to feed to the overcrowded planet is locked away. A brutal but mathematically necessary solution. And almost overnight, the world changes. The maternity wards empty out. The schools shut their doors permanently. The playgrounds rust and decay. Suddenly, the joyful, chaotic laughter of children completely vanishes from the earth. It is replaced by a heavy, unnatural silence. Humanity becomes a closed club. No new members will ever be admitted again. But this demographic freeze brings an entirely new kind of psychological torture. You are stuck with the exact same people forever. Think about how annoyed you get with your roommate after a year. Now imagine living with them for 10,000 years. The romantic concept of "till death do us part" becomes a terrifying, literal prison sentence. Relationships exhaust themselves, and mind-numbing boredom sets in. You would work the exact same mundane job, day after day, century after century, with absolutely no end in sight. The human brain simply wasn't built to process thousands of years of repetitive memories. Eventually, the mind just shuts down to cope. People become numb, apathetic ghosts of their former selves. But the tragedy goes far deeper than just individual boredom. We enter what sociologists would call the generational freeze, a total, irreversible halt to all human progress. Science, art, and culture advance because new generations bring fresh, radical ideas that challenge the old, stubborn dogmas. Without new children to see the world differently, human culture completely stagnates. We become a planet of ancient, cynical minds trapped in young bodies. You see, death is not a biological error. It is the fundamental, necessary engine of evolution. For billions of years, life survived by constantly mixing DNA, allowing nature to cull the weak and adapt to changing environments. But when nobody dies, that conveyor belt of adaptation completely stops. We become biologically frozen in time. If the climate shifts or a new pathogen emerges, we cannot adapt. We just endure layer upon layer of new suffering. With Earth completely tapped out, heavily polluted, and packed with 100 billion starving immortals, humanity would be forced to make a desperate, final gamble. If we cannot survive here, we must leave. Massive industrial spaceports would be constructed over the ruins of our dying mega-cities. And here is the dark irony. Extreme space travel suddenly becomes incredibly easy when your biology is immortal. You don't need complex cryo-sleep chambers or massive multi-generational ships with artificial farms. Because you can't die of old age or starvation, you literally just need a metal box and a trajectory. Millions of crude, heavily armored colony ships would violently launch into the dark void of space. Inside, billions of humans would sit in the pitch black, starving and miserable, for thousands of years in transit. We would land on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. But we wouldn't build beautiful utopian colonies. We would just rapidly pave them over into new concrete prisons, desperately trying to house our endlessly expanding numbers. On a macroscopic scale, humanity itself has become the exact same thing as the mutated cells in our bodies. A relentless, spreading cosmic cancer. But even if we successfully infect the entire galaxy, we will eventually hit the ultimate, unbreakable wall of physics. Entropy. The universe itself is not infinite. It has a finite amount of usable energy, and the clock is always ticking. Over trillions of years, every single star in the cosmos will exhaust its nuclear fuel. They will flicker, fade, and die completely. And what happens to our immortal, ever-expanding, ravenous human population when the universe literally runs out of light? The temperature of the cosmos will plummet to absolute zero. There will be no heat, no energy, and absolutely no food. But because your cells have been engineered to never die, you wouldn't perish. You would just freeze. Trillions of immortal humans suspended in the pitch-black void of absolute zero, fully conscious, starving, and trapped in their own bodies forever. This is the ultimate horrifying truth about biological immortality. It is not a gift from the gods. It is a prison sentence, a biological shackle that permanently ties you to a universe that is destined to decay and die around you. A story is only beautiful and meaningful because it eventually has an ending. If a book had an infinite number of pages, you would eventually stop reading. It turns out, our biological mortality is the greatest gift evolution ever gave us. It puts a strict time limit on our existence. It makes our time here precious, and it forces us to innovate, love, and act with urgency. And most importantly, it gracefully clears the stage, stepping aside so the next generation has a chance to shine. So the next time you look in the mirror and spot a new wrinkle or a gray hair, don't despair. Be thankful, because it means the system is working exactly as it should. Wait, does this mean we should stop all medical research and just accept decades of suffering as a natural necessity? Absolutely not. There is a massive, crucial difference between extending your lifespan, just existing for a longer time, and extending your health span. Thanks to modern medicine, human lifespan has skyrocketed. But we spend the last 20% of our lives sick, weak, and in pain. The true goal of modern science isn't to trap you in an immortal body forever. It is to keep you perfectly healthy, right up until the very end. To do that, real-world scientists are targeting the actual biological mechanisms of aging. And one of the biggest culprits are zombies. Well, microscopic biological zombies, officially known to scientists as senescent cells. Remember the Hayflick limit? When a cell's telomeres run out, it is supposed to politely trigger apoptosis and die. But occasionally, a severely damaged cell refuses to self-destruct. It enters a state of permanent biological suspension. It becomes a senescent cell, a zombie. And these undead cells are incredibly toxic news for your body. They don't just sit there peacefully. They actively secrete a continuous cocktail of highly inflammatory chemicals. This toxic sludge poisons the perfectly healthy neighboring cells, causing them to malfunction or even turn into zombies themselves. On a macroscopic scale, this widespread cellular inflammation directly causes arthritis, heart disease, dementia, and physical frailty. When you are young, your immune system acts like an elite zombie hunting squad, quickly finding and destroying these senescent cells. But as you age, your immune system gets exhausted. It becomes less efficient, and the biological zombies begin to pile up rapidly. This snowball effect of accumulating zombie cells is one of the primary reasons you physically feel old. So how do we stop this snowball of misery? Scientists are developing a brand new class of drugs, specifically designed to hunt down and eliminate these undead cells. They are called senolytics. Instead of altering your DNA and accidentally causing hypercancer, These drugs act like microscopic smart bombs. They float through your bloodstream, completely ignoring your healthy, functioning pink cells. But when they detect the toxic signature of a zombie cell, they lock on and trigger its self-destruct sequence. By artificially clearing out the zombie horde, we give our exhausted, aging immune systems a much-needed break. The systemic inflammation drops drastically. The aching joints, failing heart, and brain fog begin to clear. This isn't just science fiction. In laboratory experiments, when old, frail mice were given senolytic drugs, the results were staggering. They regrew lost hair, regained their energy, and ran on their wheels like youths. Their actual health span was significantly extended. Of course, a human being is much more complex than a mouse. But alongside new tools like CRISPR gene editing and cellular reprogramming, the ultimate goal is within reach. We don't want to freeze time and trap you in an immortal body for eternity. That is a curse. The goal is to allow you to live a full, vibrant life. To be 80 or 90 years old, but still hiking mountains, playing with your grandchildren, and feeling completely healthy, right up until the very end. A natural, painless, and peaceful exit after a lifetime of actual, high-quality living. Senolytics are incredibly promising, but they are just the first step in our modern biological toolkit. Another massive breakthrough in anti-aging science is a concept known as cellular reprogramming. In 2006, scientists discovered 4 specific genetic switches known as the Yamanaka factors. When activated together, these 4 unique genes act like a master reset button for your biology. They can take an old, exhausted, specialized cell, like a wrinkled skin cell or a tired muscle cell, and completely wipe its memory, turning it back into a fresh, youthful, blank slate stem cell. In a controlled laboratory dish, we can literally force biological time to run completely backward. But attempting to do this inside a living, breathing human being is incredibly and inherently dangerous. If you reset a cell's memory entirely, it completely forgets what its job in the body is supposed to be. A heart cell forgets how to beat. And a confused, immortal cell quickly turns into, you guessed it, more cancer. So researchers are currently trying to perfect a highly delicate technique called partial reprogramming, turning the biological dial back just enough to rejuvenate the cell without losing its essential identity. While we wait for these futuristic sci-fi treatments to pass decades of rigorous clinical trials, is there anything you can do right now to actually extend your personal health span? Unfortunately, it doesn't involve a magical billion-dollar glowing pill from a tech billionaire. The boring truth is, the most effective anti-aging medicine currently available to humanity is the unsexy, completely free Holy Trinity: exercise, nutrition, and sleep. Physical exertion literally forces your body to clean up its own biological garbage. It triggers a microscopic process called autophagy, where your healthy cells essentially eat the damaged ones for fuel. Proper nutrition gives your cells the exact high-quality building blocks they need to copy DNA without making fatal errors. And deep, high-quality sleep is when your brain literally flushes out the toxic proteins that cause dementia and cognitive decline. These habits won't make you live to be 1,000 years old. They won't magically grant you immortality. They simply push your personal health span curve as close to that absolute biological ceiling as possible, allowing you to reach 80, 90, or even 100 years old with your mind and your body completely intact. But eventually, no matter how perfectly you live, the hourglass will run out. And that is not a tragedy. It is the fundamental, necessary rhythm of the cosmos. Even the most magnificent, ancient stars in the galaxy must eventually die. But in their death, they forge the heavy elements necessary to create new planets, oceans, and life. The end of one story is the absolute biological requirement for the beginning of another. By gracefully accepting our mortality, we make room for the next generation to inherit the Earth. So instead of wishing for an endless, stagnant eternity in a frozen biological cage, we should focus on making the absolute most out of the incredibly brief, beautiful, and chaotic time we actually have. Because in economics, just like in biology, scarcity is the only thing that creates true value. If you had an infinite amount of time to paint a masterpiece or tell someone you love them, you would always just do it tomorrow. And eventually, tomorrow just blurs into a meaningless gray smear of eternal procrastination. But a ticking clock? A ticking biological clock forces you to pick up the brush today. It forces you to hug your friends a little tighter, to forgive a little faster, and to deeply appreciate the fleeting warmth of a sunny day. So, if that glowing green immortality virus ever actually drops from the sky, maybe we shouldn't celebrate. Maybe we should run in the exact opposite direction. Because the terrible, hidden price of living forever is sacrificing everything that actually makes us human. Our mortality is the beautiful, necessary frame that gives our life's picture its shape. It ensures that the Earth remains a vibrant, ever-changing stage for billions of unique stories, rather than a crowded, stagnant museum. Aging and death are scary, yes, but they are the ultimate proof that you are part of something much, much larger than yourself. A grand, chaotic, cosmic relay race that stretches from the very first single-celled organisms all the way up to the stars. And right now, for this brief, shining moment in the history of the universe, it is your turn to hold the baton. So run. Run as fast and as brightly as you possibly can, because the clock is ticking. And make every single, beautiful, chaotic second of it count. Because while we might not live forever, our actions will echo in this beautiful universe long after we are gone. If you want to support our channel and get a daily reminder of your existential dread, you can visit our shop to grab beautifully illustrated posters, shiny enamel pins, and incredibly soft, comforting bird plushies to hug when the universe gets too scary. Everything you buy directly supports our team and helps us make more animated science videos. You can also join our amazing Patreon community to get your very own custom bird character, hidden in the background of our future videos. We literally couldn't do this without you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next upload. If you want to learn more about the biology of aging, click the video on the left. Or if you want to explore the Fermi paradox, click the video on the right. Stay curious, keep exploring, and try to get a good night's sleep. We'll see you in the next one.